My message is not going to change. My message of you needing to get to 1 Bitcoin is not going to change. But the number of people that are becoming slowly out of reach for receiving that message is going to change. And as that generally happens in society, as more people become out of reach from receiving a particular message and a particular benefit that they think they're going to get, the NPC chip turns on, right? It's like, oh, it's just so far away now, and it's not really far away. Do you know how many messages I've gotten from people who have spent the last this bear market, getting to 1 Bitcoin, getting to 3 Bitcoin, getting to 4 Bitcoin, and these are people who are not, having millions of dollars of assets. Right? The type of conversations I have with people with millions of dollars of assets, it's a different conversation now that the ETF has come out. But before, it's like these people that have not got multi-millions of dollars of assets, that have gotten to 1 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoin or 3 Bitcoin, are going to monumentally change the direction of their last name going forward. Their progeny is going to thank them for the decisions they've made. And I've got people who've got multiple millions of dollars of real estate that are not interested because it's not part of their thing. They don't know about it. They don't want to take time to know about it. That's just arrogance. It's just arrogance. And if you're one of those people who's sitting there with assets that's not taking the time to learn this, you are being arrogant and you're going to get punished for it, because real estate is not the darling investment that everyone thought it was now, which it was for the last 30 or 40 years. Listen, look, the last few years, the world has been through so many different ups and downs and different things that have happened in the world. And it's taught me that most people, right, are just not worth thinking about, because most people are going to be like the cab driver when I landed back in London on a trip from the Netherlands to visit a friend of mine during the flu season. We were having a normal conversation, and immediately when we talked about taking the flu shot, he basically turned into basically saying that he thought everyone who didn't take it should die. Right? That's most people. Most people are just going to turn into that. And I don't want to be around most people. I don't know about you. I don't want to be around most people. I don't care what happens. I don't think Bitcoin's going to fix that, because most people with 6 months of marketing wanted to destroy half the world. Right? That's just 6 months worth of marketing. So I don't want to deal with most people. And again, my message is not going to change, but the ability to reach the goal of my message is going to change, which is going to mean that more people are more annoyed at the message that I'm saying, because they themselves cannot get to that point. They themselves cannot achieve what I'm saying, and therefore they're going to get annoyed by it. And you got to decide whether you are going to be on that side or whether you're actually going to make it work and actually get to the end goal, which is getting to that 1 Bitcoin for most people. No matter whether you've got millions of dollars of assets or whether you're working, you've got to get to that 1 Bitcoin one way or another, right? So choosing to listen to the noise, and the noise is going to get more and more, right? The noise is going to get more and more and more, because there's, again, the ETFs are going to be sucking up this Bitcoin, and it's just going to get out of reach for most people, right? So we're talking about the ETFs using already existing financial rails to suck in Bitcoin from every corner of the planet. Right? They're going to make a phone call and say, hey, you're getting a 14% loan from your Unchained Capital or whoever else, loan against your quote-unquote self-custody, or sorry, quote-unquote physical self-custody Bitcoin. Put it into the ETF and we'll give it to you at 6%. There's a lot of people that would take the tax hit on that, and just to get the loan, because they can do more money with the loan. They can make more money with the loan rather than sitting there paying that 14% interest, because they're being forced to hold it in self-custody, right? And by the way, all of this takes another leap when these funds get converted to in-kind, and that will take a while. I don't think that happens for 2 to 4 years, but I think that as soon as that happens, for example, as soon as the in-kind conversion happens, there is definitely a board meeting happening at MicroStrategy talking about what is the benefit of moving this Bitcoin from self-custody in Coinbase to the Fidelity or BlackRock ETF. That is 100% starting to happen Because for a corporation, he's not trying to run away from anyone. He's not trying to hide from anyone. He's not trying to use the core principles of what Bitcoin is about. The not your keys, not your coins doesn't apply to someone like MicroStrategy. Right? It might apply to Michael Saylor, but it doesn't apply to MicroStrategy. It's a public company owned by the public. So therefore, once that part is irrelevant, at that point, we got to be looking at what's the best financial engineering we can do with the Bitcoin and the assets that we have. And that is going to be the ETF. It's just very, very simple, right? So the ETFs are here. They're not fucking around. They're acquiring as much Bitcoin as possible. I believe that there will be $150 to $300 million a day worth of purchasing going on for the foreseeable future. Bitwise yesterday released that they alone had $58 million worth of net inflows into their fund yesterday. So this is happening right now. If you're looking at the price going, oh my God, what's happening to the price if all this ETF demand is coming in? There's been an overwhelming amount of selling pressure from GBTC. There's been an overwhelming amount of selling pressure from miners. There's been an overwhelming amount of selling pressure from people who were playing the trade of the ETF approval, right? Because if you did that, if you bought when BlackRock applied and sold on approval day, you were up like 75%, right? You were up like 75%. That's a pretty good trade for a trader. So there is selling pressure in the market right now, but that doesn't take away. And, it doesn't take away, number one, from the amount of inflows that are coming into the funds right now. It doesn't take away from the amount of interest that there is in the market right now for Bitcoin. It doesn't take away from the fact that $60 trillion are about to be inherited by the Bitcoin generation over the next 10 to 15 years. And it doesn't take into account, it doesn't affect the amount of demand that's coming down the pipeline into an asset. You are about, as my friend Samson said, because he likes getting credit for it, we are about to meet a situation where passive allocation flows are about to meet true final scarcity, right? True scarcity is about to be slapped in the face by consistent daily allocation flows. And remember, they don't care about prices. All they care about is getting a percentage allocation of the portfolio. They don't care about, your self-custody dreams. They care about getting a certain percentage of the allocation of the portfolio. Now, do I think people need to worry about self-custody and this, that, and the other? Absolutely. I have my portfolio split. But these people don't care. All they want is a percentage allocation because they're looking for the 50 to 70% CAGR over 10 years to boost the returns of their portfolio. And I believe that BlackRock hasn't even started allocating any significant capital. They've been celebrating the bleed from GBTC, and the bleed from GBTC will stop at some point, and that's when the capital will be allocated. But my goal is obviously, as I've stated many times, to get as many people to one Bitcoin as possible. As I've said, the time for my message is running out, right? By December 2024, if what I think is happening, this will all be cleaned up. All of this selling sludge from MSTR, from GBTC will be cleaned up by then. And if that happens, then by the end of the year, pretty much, low single-digit millionaires are priced out of the market in terms of getting to one Bitcoin. So I'm trying to get this out as urgently to as many people as possible, and I need your help to do it. You need to subscribe, share the videos, and get people understanding what is coming down the pipeline for Bitcoin. Don't be distracted by the price action in the short term, because the demand is still there, the hoovering up is still there, and this is still happening, and it's on track, and it's actually more successful than any other ETF asset class that's ever been launched. So this is no joke here. It's time to stay focused, because at this point they're coming, right? It's not even that they're coming, they're here, right? They're actually here purchasing this Bitcoin, hoovering up 10,000 Bitcoin a day at this point, and I believe that will slow down. But just all of the mining supply that comes out over the next 4 years, I believe will be taken up by the ETFs, and then that's before they get into all these games around financing, around options, around everything else. So, it's time to get serious. It's time to get your allocation up. In terms of allocation, it's very simple. My process is this. You determine the percentage you want to allocate. The problem with this is most people are going to get very excited and then have buyer's remorse after they get in because of the volatility of it. So I always start with 1%. If they say, oh no, why don't we do 10%? You can do 10% next week. But right now, I'm going to do 1%. Get in 1%, understand what it is, educate yourself more, learn more, read more, etc., and then you can start doing your 10% or whatever else you want to do, 5%, 10%, whatever else. Right now, 1%. And then be like, no, but like I like this idea, let's do more. No, 1%. Because the worst thing you want is they go 10%, and in the first week, Bitcoin drops 10%, right? That you don't want that, because that's going to create buyer's remorse in someone who's not used to that level of volatility. So 1%, that's it, right? So you determine the percentage. That's the first stage of this allocate part of the triangle. Then you want to explore the vehicles. So for me, at this point in time, if I'm talking to someone about the ETF, there's really two solutions here. It's self-custody or ETF. And if I want to drive them towards the ETF for the advisors that are listening here, it's very simple. If I was talking about self-custody versus the ETF, for me personally, I would always say self-custody is the premier solution that there is for Bitcoin, but it involves learning about where to buy it. You're going to buy it from the Coinbase exchange. You're going to buy it. You're going to, custody it in your wallet. You need to know what a wallet is. You need to know, you need to go find a service like Casa or whoever else that does multi-sig solutions, all of that. Basically, I would outline everything that's involved with self-custody, and then I would say, or you just go into your broker account, we click two buttons, and we get your 1% allocation. Because if you've got, a few $1 million in your portfolio or a few hundreds of thousands of dollars in your portfolio, you probably got an allocation to something that we can liquidate right now and get you into a 1% allocation of your total net worth into Bitcoin. So you explore all the vehicles. And again, if you're someone who's trying to, coach family members, then you might want to stick to the self-custody. It might just take a little bit more time. At this point, I would just focus on the ETF, because they can get their 1% in the ETF, and it's safe for most people. It's BlackRock, it's Fidelity, etc., and then the rest of it you can talk about doing self-custody, and they can learn about that. And then the third part to the allocation segment is guide them to the right fund. Right? So if I was working for BlackRock, I would talk about why the BlackRock fund is the best. If I was working for Fidelity, I would talk about why the Fidelity fund is the best. If I was working, you get the point here. But to me, to the people that I want to allow into my life, to the people that I want to invite into my life, it's going to be people who are quality people, who've got experience, and who are like-intentioned for the vision that we all see in the world. But ultimately, despite all of that, it's always only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, you shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.